An American soldier in Iraq accepted a single copper coin from an old man in Fallujah and slipped it into his pocket without a second thought. But 12 hours later, that worn piece of metal would do something no weapon, no radio, and no map could have done for him or for the 7 men walking behind him. It was the summer of 2004, the temperature near 44 degrees Celsius, and Sergeant Daniel Hayes was leading a routine foot patrol through the eastern edge of Fallujah when an old man stepped out of a doorway and pressed something into his hand. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the rest of this story or the ones still buried in the archives. The date was July 11, 2004. The city of Fallujah, in the western Anbar province of Iraq, was tense, dusty, and unusually quiet that morning. Sergeant Daniel Hayes, 27 years old, originally from Dayton, Ohio, was a former auto mechanic who had enlisted in the United States Army 4 years earlier. His unit, a small reconnaissance element of 8 men, had been assigned to walk a familiar road on the eastern outskirts of the city. The mission was simple: observe, report, return. They had walked this same street 9 times in the past 3 weeks. At 11:17 in the morning, the patrol moved past a narrow alley between 2 clay brick houses. The men walked in a staggered line, 10 meters between each soldier, weapons low but ready. Hayes was at the front. The heat was so heavy that the asphalt under their boots had begun to soften. There was almost no sound except the distant hum of a generator and the call of a bird somewhere on a rooftop. Then a door opened. An old man stepped out slowly, both hands visible. He was perhaps 70 years old, perhaps older. His face was deeply lined, his beard white, his clothing the simple gray robe common to elders in that neighborhood. He did not speak. He did not gesture for the others. He walked directly toward Hayes with the calm certainty of a man who had already decided what he was going to do. Hayes raised his left hand. The patrol stopped. The interpreter, a young Iraqi man named Karim, who had been working with the unit for 6 months, stepped forward. But the old man did not speak to Karim. He looked only at Hayes. He held out his right hand, closed into a fist, and turned it over into Hayes's gloved palm. He placed a single small object. It was a coin, old copper, worn smooth by decades of handling. There was an inscription on one side that Hayes could not read, and on the other side a simple geometric pattern, almost like a star, half erased by time. The old man closed Hayes's fingers around the coin. He looked into his eyes for what felt like a long time. Then he said 3 words in Arabic. Karim translated quietly. The old man had said, "Take the long road." Then he turned and walked back into the doorway and shut the door behind him. Hayes stood there for several seconds. He looked at the coin. He looked at Karim. Karim shrugged. Hayes slipped the coin into the small chest pocket of his vest, the one above his heart, where he usually kept a folded photograph of his younger sister. He did not think about it again. The patrol continued. They finished their route at 14:40 in the afternoon. They returned to the forward operating base. Hayes took off his vest, drank a liter of water, and wrote his report. The coin stayed in the pocket. That night the patrol was scheduled to return along a different route. A vehicle convoy was moving supplies from the base to a checkpoint 12 kilometers to the south, and Hayes' team was tasked with walking ahead of the convoy on foot. The route was the standard one, the same one they had used for the past 2 months. The faster road, the shorter road. At 2300 hours, the team formed up at the gate. Hayes adjusted his vest and felt something solid against his chest. He remembered the coin. He took it out, looked at it for a moment in the yellow gate light, and then for a reason he could not explain even years later, he turned to the lieutenant on duty and said the words that would change everything. He said, "Sir, request permission to take the long road tonight." The lieutenant frowned. The long road added 40 minutes to the patrol. It cut through a quieter agricultural strip and then looped back. There was no tactical reason to take it. Hayes did not have a tactical reason. He only had a sentence from a man whose name he did not know and a coin in his pocket. He could not explain it. He simply repeated the request. The lieutenant looked at him for a long moment. Then he nodded. The patrol left the gate at 23:11. They walked the long road. They reached the checkpoint at 01:47 in the morning without any incident. The convoy followed 30 minutes behind them on the same long road. At 02:14 in the morning, a passing reconnaissance drone operating 2 kilometers away picked up a thermal signature on the short road, the road they had not taken. Buried at the precise point where Hayes's team would have been walking at midnight, an explosive device had been placed sometime between dusk and the early hours of the morning. The drone footage showed the disturbance in the soil clearly. The device was located, marked, and disabled by an ordnance team at first light. The men in Hayes's patrol learned the news at breakfast. There was no celebration. There was a long, heavy silence at the table. 7 men understood all at once that they were sitting at that table because of 40 minutes of extra walking and a single sentence from a stranger. Hayes returned to the eastern neighborhood of Fallujah 3 days later. He went off duty with Karam. He knocked on the door where the old man had stood. A young woman answered. She did not know any old man. She had lived in that house with her family for 11 years. There was no elderly relative, no grandfather. She had never seen a man matching the description Hayes gave her. Hayes asked the neighbors. 2 of them remembered seeing an old man in the street that morning. One said he had walked toward the doorway. The other said he had walked away from it. No one knew who he was. No one had seen him before. No one saw him again. Hayes carried the coin for the rest of his deployment. He carried it on his second deployment as well. He never showed it to anyone outside the original 7 men of his patrol. When he returned home to Ohio in 2007, he placed the coin in a small wooden box on a shelf in his bedroom, where it remains today. He has told this story only twice in 20 years. Once to his sister, once for this record. There are events in war that resist explanation. They do not arrive with proof. They arrive with consequence. A coin pressed into a glove. A sentence translated by a young man who is no longer alive to confirm it. A doorway that does not remember who stood in it. 7 men who walked home because one of them listened to a stranger he could not later find. The official military report on that patrol contains no mention of a coin, no old man, no 3 words. It only notes, route changed at the discretion of the patrol leader. It is the entire reason this story exists. If this story moved you, the algorithm needs you to do one small thing. Press the like button so the next forgotten patrol can be heard. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell, because every week we open another sealed envelope from the deserts of Iraq, the rooftops of Mosul, and the long roads of Fallujah. These are not stories of war. These are stories of the small moments that decided who came home and who did not. Tell us in the comments which detail of this story stayed with you the longest.